Imagine a church. Not a cathedral with soaring arches and stained glass that makes you weep.
No.
Just a standard, slightly beige suburban Catholic parish in a town called Alabaster Harbor. But the sound inside isn't a choir, and it's not the organ, though we will definitely talk about the organ later.
Oh, we have to.
The sound is this low, persistent, almost electric hum. And the air, it isn't filled with the smell of incense or old wood. It is thick with gnats.
Oof.
Thousands of them, fungal gnats. They're in the holy water fountains, creating this gross little film. They're buzzing in the confessional booth. It is a biblical plague, but it wasn't sent by God to punish the wicked.
No, it was sent by a parishioner named Miss Winkle.
Miss Winkle and her monstera plant.
Her monstera plant that she just refused to stop overwatering. It's such a visceral, sticky way to open a story. You immediately understand that we are not dealing with, high-stakes political intrigue or a global catastrophe in the traditional sense.
Yeah, not at all.
We are dealing with the catastrophe of the mundane. We are diving into Lost Lambs by Madeline Cash, and specifically, we are dissecting the ecosystem of Alabaster Harbor.
Alabaster Harbor is the setting, but I feel like ecosystem is exactly the right word because everything here is it's rotting from the inside out.
It really is.
You've got the high-tech wealth of the Lattice Mass software company on one side of town, and then you have the decaying, gnat-infested reality of the people actually living there. And right at the center of this rot is the Flynn family.
The Flynns are our case study today. And if you have ever felt like modern suburban life is just a performance where everyone forgot their lines but is, refusing to leave the stage, this is the deep dive for you.
100%.
We have Bud, the father, Catherine, the mother, and 3 daughters who are all in their own chaotic ways trying to escape the gravitational pull of the family unit.
But I want to be clear right off the bat. Let's not frame this as just another, dysfunctional family story. We've seen a million of those.
Right.
What Cash is doing here is sharper. She is looking at how we use systems bureaucracy, medical terminology, surveillance logs to manage our messy human emotions.
That is such a key insight to hold on to. Throughout this book, the characters don't talk about sadness or heartbreak.
No.
They talk about chemical imbalances. They don't talk about cheating. They talk about arrangements and outsourcing. They are trying to medicalize and corporatize their own misery to make it manageable.
Which brings us right back to that gnat-infested church and the priest, Father Andrew. He's our entry point into this world, and honestly, I feel for the guy.
Oh, me too.
He's not your typical fire and brimstone creature.
Far from it. Father Andrew majored in French cinema. He's a progressive. He likely had these dreams of discussing the nuance of God's silence or, the aesthetics of grace.
Yeah, the quiet suffering in a Robert Bresson film or something.
Exactly. And instead, he is managing a pest control crisis and a congregation that is completely, utterly absurd.
The details here are hilarious, but also just so painful. You have Miss Winkle, the patient zero of the gnat plague, whose child wears gun range earmuffs to mass because the organ is too loud.
The organ is too loud in a church.
And then you have the Consent Through Christ workshops.
It's religion trying to pivot to the modern era and just failing miserably. Father Andrew represents the failure of traditional authority figures. He tries to solve the gnat problem logically.
Sure.
He uses traps, he uses sprays. But when those fail, his mind just spirals. He starts fantasizing about an ecosystem solution.
Bring in the spiders.
Bring in spiders to eat the gnats.
But then you have a spider problem.
Exactly. So then you need frogs to eat the spiders, then cats to eat the frogs, then coyotes to eat the cats.
It's a cascading disaster. He's imagining a whole food chain of violence just to solve a minor annoyance. And I think that is the perfect metaphor for the Flynn family, right?
It's absolutely the metaphor.
They introduce one dysfunction to solve another, and it just keeps escalating until, you need a coyote in the living room.
It's the law of unintended consequences, but applied to emotional suppression. And the catalyst for us seeing this dysfunction so clearly is the youngest daughter, Harper Flynn.
Harper, she walks into his office, ignoring the gnats, by the way, which is such a power move, and she wants to confess.
But she hasn't been to church in ages.
Right.
Harper is, 12 or 13? She's at that age where you are just smart enough to see the cracks in the adult world, but not nearly powerful enough to fix them. And she starts confessing to breaking the 9th commandment, bearing false witness.
Lying.
Constantly. She lies about everything, mundane things like what she had for lunch. But then she escalates.
She escalates fast.
She tells people her dad is looking up ways to kill himself. She tells people she committed arson. She says she freed lobsters from a tank at a Chinese restaurant.
But look at why she lies. This is the first big takeaway for you, and I really want to dwell on this for a second. When Father Andrew asks her why she does this, she gives an answer that just stopped me in my tracks.
It's an incredible line.
She says, gun to my head, I'm incredibly, painfully, mythically bored.
Mythically bored.
That is a terrifying thing for a child to say. Not just bored, mythically bored. Like, her boredom is this ancient epic force.
It reframes the whole moral argument of the story, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Usually we think of lying as a sin of malice. You lie to hurt someone or to get away with something.
Right.
Harper is framing lying as a survival mechanism against the void. She's generating content because her reality is just empty.
She's a content creator.
In a really dark way, yes.
Yeah.
She looks at her family, stagnant, quiet, repressed, and she just decides to introduce plot points. Dad is suicidal as a plot point.
I am an arsonist as a plot point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She is trying to turn her life into a story because the actual story she's living in is just buffering.
So let's look at the people responsible for that buffering. The parents, Bud and Catherine. I want to start with Bud because his introduction is one of the most pathetic and deeply relatable things I've read in a long time.
Bud Flynn, provider,
Yeah.
the systems manager. We meet him sitting in his minivan.
And he's not just sitting there checking emails. He is actively consuming a stolen stash of his daughter's antidepressants, trizolitan, and eating dark chocolate.
He's making his own little chemical cocktail.
Yeah, in his stomach. And he's looking at the ocean, thinking about driving the van straight into the water.
Who he doesn't, and this is so critical, he doesn't stop because he has some sudden epiphany about the sanctity of life. He doesn't stop because he sees a vision of his children's faces.
He stops because the car won't let him.
It's the safety sensors, the lane assist, the collision avoidance. The machine is designed to keep him alive, regardless of his intent.
I think this is such a brilliant commentary on modern safety. We have built a world so safe, so padded, that you can't even have a proper tragic exit anymore. Bud is trapped by his own reliability.
He is. And his own body is conspiring against him, too. He just had a colonoscopy.
And it came back clean.
He came back clean. He is reliable, he is healthy, he is safe, and he hates it.
He hates it because it means he has no excuse to leave. If he were sick, he could check out. If the car would let him crash, he could end it. But no, he's forced to keep living this life he didn't really choose.
And this brings us to this concept that he's obsessed with, the loss of yes.
The loss of yes.
He remembers his early courtship with Catherine, not as this time of deep emotional bonding, but as a time of just reckless affirmation.
It was the era of yes. Yes, let's drive to the horizon. Yes, let's sneak into that pool. Yes, let's make love on the roof.
It was impulsive, it was dangerous, it was alive.
And now?
Now that yes has been completely replaced by reliability. He feels like a piece on a board game that has been glued in place. He's the systems manager for the town of Alabaster Harbor, but he feels like the system is managing him.
He looks at his life, the minivan, the house that needs painting, the job, and he doesn't see a life he built. He sees a series of logistical traps.
Yes.
I think a lot of people can relate to that specific kind of midlife crisis. It's not about wanting a sports car or a younger partner.
No, it's deeper.
It's about realizing that every choice you've made has narrowed your future options down to zero. He sees the timeline just calcifying. And the biggest trap he feels caught in, his marriage to Catherine.
Catherine is, well, she is a fascinating counterpoint to Bud. If Bud is frozen, Catherine is trying to vibrate at a frequency so high that she becomes invisible.
That's a great way to put it.
While Bud is eating pills in the van, Catherine is in the bathtub.
An oatmeal bath. Smoking a joint, which, I mean, frankly, sounds like a great Friday night if you ignore the context.
Right. But the context is everything. When her daughter Abigail knocks on the door, Catherine doesn't say, go away, I'm busy. She says, I have potential melanoma.
It's weaponized hypochondria.
Yeah.
She uses the threat of death just to buy herself 10 minutes of silence. I might have cancer, leave me alone.
It speaks to her desperation for solitude, but it also speaks to her need to be interesting. Melanoma is dramatic. Mom is tired, is boring. And Catherine was an artist once. She was a photographer. In her youth, she photographed coastal detritus, broken bottles, abandoned factories. She found beauty in wreckage.
And now
She shifted her focus inward. Encouraged by their neighbor, Jim Doherty, she's taking these raw, unflattering self-portraits. Catherine the model, she calls it.
Okay.
She's documenting her own aging process. the wrinkles, the sagging.
Is this narcissism? Or is it something else? Because taking photos of your own decay feels, I don't know, aggressive.
It is aggressive. It's aggressive vulnerability. She's trying to prove she exists.
Yeah.
In a house where her husband is emotionally catatonic and her kids are in their own little worlds, she is looking at herself in the lens to say, I am still here, I am changing, I am matter.
And she's doing this with an audience, the neighbor, Jim Doherty. Now, we have to talk about Jim because he is such a weird character to be the other man.
He is. He's not a dashing hero. He owns a Dickensian-themed pub called Oliver Twist.
Which is a crime against puns. I just want to put that on the record.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
He makes bad pottery in his basement, lumpy mugs and bowls. He is objectively less successful and reliable than Bud. But Catherine loves him.
But does she love him? Or does she love that he validates her misery?
That's the crucial distinction. Jim Doherty represents a concept Bud calls leidos. It's a Czech word from a Milan Kundera novel.
Leidos, yeah, unpack that for us because it feels like the intellectual anchor of Bud's whole resentment.
Leidos is a difficult word to translate, but it basically means a state of torment created by the sudden sight of one's own misery. It's that humiliated despair you feel when you are reminded of everything that has gone wrong in your life.
So it's not just jealousy.
No. Jealousy is, I want what you have. Leidos is, your existence proves that I am a failure.
Wow.
When Bud sees Jim freer, artistic, spending time with Catherine, making his bad pottery, he feels Leidos. He feels humiliated by his own reliability. Jim isn't the enemy because he's evil. He's the enemy because he makes Bud feel the weight of his own choices.
That is heavy. But it perfectly explains why Bud hates him so much. It's not really about the affair. It's about the freedom Jim represents.
And this dynamic leads to Catherine's big proposal, the arrangement.
The arrangement. This is the central conflict of their marriage. She wants an open marriage.
But listen to how she frames it. This is where that corporate language comes right back in.
Yeah.
She doesn't talk about sexual liberation or passion or finding herself.
No.
She calls it a moral loophole. She calls it outsourcing.
Outsourcing. She sounds like a CEO trying to cut costs in Q4.
I can't provide the emotional labor you need, Bud, so we're going to outsource that to a third-party vendor.
Precisely. She views the marriage as a business that is failing, and this is her restructuring plan. She is trying to optimize their dysfunction.
Oh my God.
And Bud, however, is horrified, not just because of the infidelity aspect, but because he just wants the yes back. He wants the connection they used to have.
And what does he call the arrangement?
He calls it a lateral move at best. A lateral move at best. That line made me laugh out loud. It's so bureaucratic. It's like getting transferred to a different department in the same failing company.
It's the ultimate bureaucratic tragedy. They're literally negotiating the terms of their disconnection. And while the parents are locked in this bizarre Cold War of the arrangement and Leidos, the children are left to their own devices. Which brings us right back to Harper.
Harper, the mythically bored genius. We establish she lies for fun, but it goes deeper than that. She's intellectually isolated.
Completely. There's a backstory about her biting a child at a friendship circle because she wasn't being challenged.
Bite me, she said, literally.
And since the school system can't handle her, she just starts teaching herself languages. Latin, Russian, Farsi, ASL, Korean, Italian, Spanish.
This detail fascinates me. She's learning all these ways to communicate, but she's using them to isolate herself further.
How do you mean?
Well, if you speak Farsi at the dinner table in Alabaster Harbor, you aren't communicating. You're building a wall. You're showing off an intelligence that no one else can engage with.
That's a great point. It's a performance of intellect. She ends up in a Russian horticultural chat room saving a glowworm. She's just desperate for a puzzle to solve. She needs stimulation.
So Bud, trying to keep her busy, and maybe out of trouble, brings her to his work at Alabaster Harbor. He gives her the task of organizing his digital labor.
Bad move, Bud. You do not give a bored genius access to your surveillance logs.
Or maybe it's the only move that makes sense, because Harper actually looks at the data, but is just watching screens, making sure the system is running. He's looking at the form.
Harper is analyzing the content, and she notices gaps.
Huge gaps. Millions of containers.
Containers from China. Metal, paper, wood. They are unaccounted for in the logs. They vanish, or maybe they never existed. Harper suspects drugs, biological weapons, racehorses. Her imagination just runs wild.
But the data supports the fact that something is wrong.
It's a massive hole in reality. It's like the missing dark matter of the town.
And this is where the story shifts from a family drama to something almost noir.
It does. Harper confronts Bud about this. She accuses him of being complicit in high-level trafficking. And Bud's reaction is so telling. He doesn't panic about the crime.
No, he doesn't engage with the facts at all.
He tries to give her fatherly advice. He pivots to philosophy to avoid the felony.
He asks her a fundamental question. Do you want to be happy? Or do you want to be right?
That is the ultimate cynical adult question. Ignore the corruption, sweetie, and just have a nice life. It's the lesson he learned. He chose happy, or at least safe, by ignoring his own desires. And he wants her to do the same.
And Harper, without a moment of hesitation, what does she say?
She chooses right.
Being right brings me happiness.
And that is the danger of Harper. She hasn't learned to compromise with reality yet. In a town built on facades like Catherine's arrangement or Miss Winkle's cheerful plant, Harper is the one person willing to pull the thread that unravels the whole sweater.
She treats truth as an absolute.
Whereas everyone else treats it as a negotiable commodity.
So while Harper is pulling at these threads of truth, her sister Abigail is busy putting on a mask. Let's talk about Abigail. She's the oldest, right?
Yes. Abigail is the beauty of the family, God-given freckles, plump lips, but she feels incredibly two-dimensional. She feels like an image rather than a person.
And she has this obsession with losing weight, but you pointed out in the pre-show notes that it's not about body image in the traditional sense. It's existential.
It is. She wants to be thin enough to evoke concern. She wants to look beautifully miserable. It's an aesthetic of sadness. She feels like if she looks tragic, then she'll have depth. If people worry about her, then she matters.
There's that incredible story about the hickeys.
Oh, the fake hickeys.
Yes,
This is classic Abigail. She used foundation to create fake hickeys on her neck to manufacture a scandal involving an art teacher.
Why? Just for the drama?
For the drama.
Yeah.
It resulted in a lawsuit. It was a complete disaster. But she said she enjoyed the ephemerality of love. She enjoyed the performance of it. She wants to be the protagonist of a tragic romance novel.
It's performative trauma, and it reminds me of sad fishing on social media. You know, creating a visual of distress just to get engagement.
That's exactly what it is. And she gets her chance to enter a real tragic romance world when she goes to this party at Alabaster Manor. This whole segment felt like a fever dream to me.
It is deeply surreal. She goes with her wealthy cousin to bet. The party is at the home of Warren T. Alabaster, the tycoon who basically owns the town. The atmosphere is just thick.
They're taking these drugs called purples.
Which make you feel like you stood up too fast, which is a terrible high, if you ask me. Hey, you want to feel lightheaded and nauseous? Take this.
And there are exterminating rats. Not exterminating, exterminating.
Internal rats! What even are those? Hallucinations? Bioweapons?
It's unclear, and that ambiguity is the point. The guests are described as bodiless specters. It's the disconnect of extreme wealth. The rich in Alabaster Harbor aren't even fully human anymore. They're just appetites floating in a mansion.
And in the middle of this nightmare, she meets Wes.
War Crimes Wes.
What a nickname.
That's what they call him. He's a private security contractor. A mercenary. He has a twitching eye. He's 22 or 23. And Abigail is a high schooler. This is a predator situation.
But she's into it. He's dangerous. Tibet calls him a beast.
And Abigail is intrigued by his scarcity. He's dismissive of her. He's not fawning over her like the boys at school. He represents something real and violent.
Then there's that encounter with the man in the seersucker suit, Dr. Dolt.
This scene is chilling, Dr. Dolt. He talks to her about scarcity fostering desire. He implies the party has been infiltrated by schoolgirls on purpose.
Oh, God.
It's predatory, but it's wrapped in this pseudo-philosophical babble. He's explaining the economics of her own exploitation to her face.
And Abigail handles it. She doesn't run screaming. She escapes by saying she needs to see how the sausage is made.
She's savvy. She knows how to navigate this world of predators, Wes. Dolt by playing a role. She begins dating Wes, and she just leans into the girlfriend of a soldier trope. She even makes him a keychain.
What does it say?
Thank you for your service.
Wow. It's so performative. It's like she's cosplaying a relationship. But then she goes home, sneaks in, and what does she do?
She kicks her sleeping father in the shin just to make sure he's alive, and then she drinks her mom's vodka.
That's the cycle of dysfunction right there. She plays the role of the adult woman at the party, holding her own against mercenaries and tycoons, then comes home and acts out like a traumatized child.
Exactly. She checks on bed because she's terrified he actually will drive into the sea, but she kicks him because she's angry he's so weak. She hates his reliability, but she relies on it.
So we have Harper the genius, Abigail the beauty, and then we have Louise.
Poor Louise. the middle child.
Louise feels completely invisible. She's never broken a bone. She's never won an award. She was an easy labor.
She describes herself as living on Side Street. She's the NPC, the non-playable character in her own family's drama.
She even has a speech impediment that only comes out when she's nervous. Wide, white tongues.
Wide right turns. It's such a small detail, but it emphasizes her struggle to move forward, to turn a corner. She's stuck. She can't articulate her own path.
And in a desperate bid for attention, she decides to sign up for a beauty pageant.
The Our Lady of Suffering Spring Inner Beauty Pageant.
The title alone is a masterpiece of Catholic guilt and contradiction. Inner beauty.
Louise imagines the judges looking at immaculate aortas and perfect pink organs.
That is heartbreaking.
It is. She knows she can't win a regular beauty pageant against Abigail, so she hopes her organs are top tier. She's hoping that if she is sliced open, someone will finally find something valuable inside her.
The scene where she tries to sign up with Father Andrew is just, it's comedy gold. Father Andrew is there with Miss Winkle,
who is still defending her gnat plant.
Of course she is. And Louise is just begging to be seen.
Father Andrew asks for her talent, and she says she has none.
So what does he do?
He writes TBD on the form, to be determined.
That is Louise's whole existence. TBD, she is waiting to find out who she is. She's waiting for the plot to happen to her. And because she can't find validation at home, she turns to the internet.
Enter yours truly.
This is maybe the most ambiguous and potentially dangerous part of Louise's story. She joins a chat room for middle children, a digital support group for the invisible.
And she starts talking to a user named yours truly, or
yours speaks to her in this, well, it's a biblical way.
I will lead you to victory. Immutable divine law of God. It's prophetic. It's grandiose.
Is it a cult leader, a predator, a bot?
We have no idea. But Louise eats it up. She craves unconditional acceptance. Yours validates her desire to be special. In a house where everyone is shouting or lying or hiding, yours is the only voice that is actually listening to her.
It's so creepy because it mirrors the consent through Christ workshops and the religious dysfunction of the town. She's finding a digital God because the real one and her real father are completely absent.
Exactly. She's seeking a shepherd. And she found one in the digital void. She's so vulnerable to radicalization because she has no foundation at home.
So, okay. We've met the whole family. We've got the gnat-filled church, the surveillance port with the missing cargo, the wealthy manor with the internal rats. When you put all this together, what are we actually looking at? What is the ecosystem of Alabaster Harbor?
I think if we zoom out, Alabaster Harbor is a study in the arrangement on a macro scale.
How so? Explain that.
Think about it. Catherine wants an arrangement to ignore the cracks in her marriage. The town has an arrangement where the wealthy live in the manor behind security cameras, engaging in all this debauchery, while the middle class, represented by Bud, maintain the security systems that supposedly keep everyone safe.
But the security systems aren't watching the right things.
Exactly. Bud is watching screens, but millions of containers are missing. The town is rotting from the inside, like the gnat infestation, but everyone is focused on the surface. Miss Winkle worries about the organ volume, not the fact that she brought a plague into the church. Bud worries about his reliability and his colonoscopy, not the fact that he's participating in massive fraud, or at least negligence at the port.
It's a culture of blindness, willful blindness. Everyone is agreeing to pretend that things are working.
And it's all interconnected dysfunction. The family rarely eats together. When they do, it's chaos. Bud is sleeping in the van. Catherine is high in the bath. The kids are forging notes to skip school. There is no center. There's no core.
And they're all running away. That's the common thread that ties them all together.
Yes. Bud wants to drive into the sea. That's a literal escape. Catherine escapes into the arrangement. And Jim Doherty, an emotional escape.
Abigail escapes into the dangerous world of war crimes, Wes, an aesthetic sadness, a dramatic escape.
Louise escapes into the internet, and yours truly, a digital escape. And Harper, she escapes into other languages.
She literally learns new ways to speak so she doesn't have to communicate with the people around her.
Which is the ultimate irony, isn't it? She can speak Farsi and Russian, she can communicate with millions of people around the globe, but she can't get her father to listen to the truth about his own job.
The missing cargo really sticks with me. It feels like the physical manifestation of the family's secrets. Big, heavy containers that should be there but aren't. Just like the love that should be there, or that Bud lost.
It raises the question, is Bud's incompetence just incompetence? Or is it a survival mechanism?
What do you mean?
Well, if he looked too closely at the screens like Harper did, he'd have to blow up his life. He'd have to choose right over happy. And Bud has spent his whole adult life trying to be reliable and safe. He can't afford to be right.
That's tragic. He's the systems manager who refuses to understand the system.
And that's why Harper is the threat.
Mm-hmm.
She's the glitch in the Matrix. She's the one saying, hey, the Emperor has no clothes.
And the port has no cargo.
And the church has gnats.
And the church has gnats. So what does this all mean for us? Why does the story of the Flynn family matter beyond just being this wild, dark comedy?
I think Lost Lambs is holding up a mirror to the way we compartmentalize our own lives. We all have our arrangements. Maybe it's not an open marriage. Maybe it's scrolling through our phones to avoid talking to our spouse.
Right.
Maybe it's obsessing over a hobby to ignore a stalling career.
Or using inner beauty to mask the fact that we feel invisible. Or taking antidepressants and eating chocolate in a minivan.
We build these structures to manage our unhappiness. We outsource our emotions. We create aesthetic sadness for social media. We retreat into chat rooms. We do anything to avoid the sheer boredom and terror of sitting in a room with the people we are supposed to love and actually being with them.
The Flynns are just a heightened version of us. They represent that modern tragedy where you can have everything, intelligence, beauty, duty, a house in the suburbs, and still feel completely empty because there's no genuine connection.
And the danger, the real danger, is what happens when the lost lambs stop waiting for a shepherd. Louise found yours truly. Harper found the missing cargo. Abigail found a mercenary. When the traditional structures, the father, the priest, when they fail, people don't just sit still.
Really don't.
They go looking for something else. And usually in a town like Alabaster Harbor, they find something darker.
It's like the gnats. You can try to ignore them, you can wear earmuffs, you can hide in an oatmeal bath, but eventually the infestation takes over. You have to address the source.
You can't outrun the rot. You have to clean the soil. And nobody in Alabaster Harbor seems willing to get their hands dirty, except maybe Harper, and she's liable to burn the whole place down just to see what happens.
So here's a thought I want to leave you with. We talked about Harper choosing to be right over being happy. In a world like Alabaster Harbor, where everyone else is choosing a delusion to survive, beauty pageants, affairs, fake hickeys, is the truth the most dangerous weapon of all?
And if you are the only one holding that weapon, does it make you a hero, or does it just make you the most lonely person in the room? Harper is right, but she's alone. Bud is wrong, but he's safe. Which one is better? I don't know if the book answers that, but it forces us to ask it.
Something to think about the next time you see a gnat. Or a monstera plant. Thanks for diving in with us.
See you next time.